I wear the yellow sweater when the sky is bruised. Not for fashion, my hands don't argue with buttons anymore. But because the color reminds me of butter and sun, and the way fresh cornbread cracks when you press it. The nursing home hall smells like lemon disinfectant and boiled carrots. And the televisions talk to themselves behind half-closed doors. I know which rooms hold the lonely ones. The laughter loops to clean, like it's been rehearsed for a studio audience that never shows. My name is Loretta May. Hollow 74. I used to iron pleats, so sharp the church mothers would squint when they sat. Now I fold paper napkins into quiet boats and watch them drift across the tray table until the aide tells me it's time to take my pills. I wasn't always here. I had a small blue house with a porch that sagged politely and a yard that refused to give up its dandelions. A house with a stove that liked to sing when it heated up, and a window over the sink that framed the maple tree. Like a picture your grandmother won at a raffle. The house was my stubborn heart made of boards and paint. I kept it neat because the world wasn't. When my son, Darius, was 9. He used to sit on the kitchen floor while I rolled dough. He'd dust his fingers in flour and ask me if men were allowed to cry. I told him they were allowed to breathe and crying is just breath with salt in it. He said okay and used my apron like a cape. That boy had a laugh that made our ceiling fan wobble. He grew older in quick jumps, like a picture book with pages missing. By 30, he wore suits that made other men stand up straighter and smiled with his lips pressed together so his joy wouldn't spill. Success polished him. Polite words did the rest. He started talking about equity and leverage the way a preacher talks about heaven, something you can't see but better believe in if you want to sit at the grown-up table. When the doctor told me my left knee was tired of carrying the same old arguments and would be sending me pain like postcards, Darius brought brochures. Assisted living. He said the phrase like it was one word, like a pillow. Just while the house is renovated, Ma, he said. Safer for you. Fewer stairs. He kissed my hair and smelled like cedar and new promises. I signed things. I didn't ask enough questions because mothers don't want to make their sons explain their kindness. They are busy holding the bowl steady while someone else stirs. I packed the photo of me and his father at Coney Island, the white dress I used to wear when I needed strangers to underestimate me, and the quilt my mother stitched from dresses that remembered more laughter than sorrow. I brought them here like talismans. The admission nurse used a voice made of pillows. I let her. The first week, Darius visited with sweet coffee and a timeline. Contractors start Monday. We'll refinance and pull some equity for upgrades. You'll love it, Ma. He walked the hallway like a man measuring exits. He kissed my forehead. He left his cologne hanging in the air like an expensive ghost. 2 weeks later, he brought papers with tabs that fluttered like flags. Power of attorney, he said lightly, as if it were a cousin coming to stay for a little while, just until you're back home. I hesitated. He tapped the line with a pen that clicked too brightly. Protects you, he said. The pen felt heavy. I signed my name as if I were mailing myself somewhere I didn't remember choosing. Then the visits stretched thin. A text became a voicemail, became a second-hand update. He's in Dallas. He's under a deadline. He'll swing by next week. My room watched me the way a bus stop watches a traveler who hasn't learned the schedule. I learned the schedule. Breakfast at 8. A game on Wednesday. A new person down the hall who thought the year was always 1979. I didn't correct him. Sometimes I parked my chair by the window just to see if my blue house would roll past the glass like a brave dream. It never did. What arrived instead was a glossy postcard. A realtor's smile so wide it looked like a dare. Open house, newly renovated charming bungalow, to BR1BA, modern finishes. My address in fat, cheerful numbers. The maple tree cropped like a stranger who wandered into the shot and didn't know to duck. I didn't breathe for a long time. The aide named Raina touched my shoulder. You okay, Miss Loretta? I told her I was allergic to ink. She laughed without believing me, and fetched water because sometimes, kindness is a cup instead of a sentence. I didn't call Darius. I took my time. My bones advise patience now. I turned the card over and read the realtor's name 3 times like a spell that might undo itself if you said it sweet enough. Then I pressed the call button on the bedrail, but not for the nurse. For the past. I closed my eyes and found the rhythm of my mother's foot pedal on the singer machine. I heard the zipper of every dress I ever mended and the snap of each button. I reattached with thread that matched better than the original. I packed my purse with the things I still trusted: ID, checkbook, a pen that would rather run out of ink than lie, and the tin of wintergreen mints that keeps my temper domesticated. Raina signed me out with a look that said she didn't approve of the world but still believed in walking people to doorways. A taxi smelled like promises that quit after 2 weeks. I rolled down the window for air that remembered things. The driver turned the radio to a station that refused to be sad. When we turned onto my street, I knew the house before I saw it. You can recognize your own heartbeat in a crowd. The porch had a new rail. The door was a color I had not chosen. The maple threw its patient shade like a robe on a chair. The lock didn't know me anymore. My key went in and shook its head. I stood there with my purse like a woman who has rehearsed a speech and realizes the stage has been moved to a different address. I didn't knock. I sat on the stoop and let the afternoon slide around me like butter in a hot pan. Neighbors passed with plastic bags. A boy skateboarded past shame like it wasn't custom tailored to fit him. I pretended I belonged because I did. I belonged the way a scar belongs to a story. I called the number on the postcard. The realtor answered in a voice made of champagne. I told her I was the mother of the owner and would like to schedule a showing. She exclaimed like I was a celebrity and offered me noon on Saturday. I took it. Then I called someone who had never once used a pillow voice with me. "Ms. Hollow," said Alma Ruiz, attorney at law. Once my landlord's smart niece, and now the woman I call when I need a spine taller than my body. "What did he make you sign?" I told her. She hummed an answer that made the taxi driver lower the radio a notch, as if even machines knew to listen. "Come to my office," Alma said. "Bring the card. Bring the papers. Bring the part of you that doesn't flinch." I did. Her office smelled like lemon and ink and the kind of clean that comes from people who don't leave their mess for He laughed without humor, a sound like a fork dropped in a church. "You'd embarrass me like this." In front of he gestured at the air, which had the decency not to point back. "After everything I'm doing for you." For me, I almost apologized to words for what he'd done to them. "You moved me like furniture. You priced my memories by the square foot. You gave my porch a color I never consented to wear." He swallowed. The realtor pretended to need the bathroom. A young couple holding hands looked at me the way you look at a bridge about to hold your weight. Alma handed Darius one last paper. "The house is held by the trust," she said. "Your mother's right to live here is secure. Your POA is revoked. Any attempt to encumber the property further will find us on its throat. Kindly remove your listings by end of day." He didn't yell. He simply ran out of words and pride at the same time. He left with his jaw set to legacy. The door didn't slam. The maple exhaled, and I swear the house settled, half an inch into the earth, like a woman who has finally kicked off the shoes her vanity demanded. Reina picked me up in the facility van because she is the kind of person who knows when to bring a car. On the ride back, she glanced at me in the mirror. "You okay?" she asked. I looked at my hands. They shook a little. Thunder is loud, even when it does the right thing. "I'm all right," I said. I thought he'd say sorry. Isn't that funny? Sorry is a muscle some folks never learn to flex. She said, "We'll get you tea." Back in my room, the window looked different, as if the maple had agreed to grow a second branch just for me. On the nightstand, the postcard sat face down like a child who knows it has misbehaved. I turned it over and drew a small X through the realtor's smile with a pen that doesn't lie. Then I did something the Bible doesn't mention but my mother would have approved. I wrote Darius a letter I didn't intend to mail. I put every true thing into the envelope of paper. You were my joy when the light bills played dice with my hope. I walked to work so you could ride the bus. I ate beans so you could ask for seconds. I wanted you to be a man who washed his hands before touching a dream. I folded it. I pressed my palm on the crease. I slid it into the drawer with the wintergreen mints and felt my heart say, "Enough." Outside, somebody's grandson laughed in the courtyard. The sound bounced off brick like a penny finding the bottom of a well. I closed my eyes and let it land. The morning after the open house unraveled. The cafeteria served oatmeal too obedient to be trusted. I stirred honey into it and watched steam rise like a small blessing that didn't know my name. People say the body forgets, but mine remembers, in echoes, the ache behind my left eye before rain, the hum at the base of my spine when someone I love is walking toward a mistake, the thin high whistle in my ear that means I've outlived whatever tried to drag me under. The whistle sang soft that morning. I let it. News travels in places like ours without footsteps. By lunch, Miss Ruth down the hall told me she'd heard I'd put a judge inside my pocketbook and made a son spit out a deed. I told her not to believe everything Joy tells her. She cackled until her dentures tried to run. People love a story with a blade. They don't always know the hand it cuts belongs to the teller. Darius didn't call. Pride is a slow animal. It eats the wrong things and sleeps under bridges it built itself. 3 days passed. I watered the cactus by my window. Raina smuggled in peach slices that tasted like they remembered summer. We watched a game show where strangers guessed the price of what doesn't matter. On the fourth day, a man from the bank arrived with a clipboard that wanted to be important. He asked for me in the lobby, said he needed my signature for a routine update on accounts attached to my name. I asked him to wait while I fetched my glasses. Instead, I fetched Alma. She arrived with a smile that belonged in a courtroom and informed the man that his routine had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. He left with fewer illusions than he brought. That evening, I sat with the letter I hadn't mailed and wondered what apology would sound like if it had been taught to walk upright. I slept with the window cracked and the maple whispering stories it learned from wind. Morning found me anyway. Christmas came the way it always does in places where time is a schedule, not a season. Paper snowflakes taped 2 doors. A tree in the lobby blinking its brave little lights. Volunteers with Santa hats and soft voices, holding carols like fragile glass. I wore my red sweater because stubbornness is a holiday too. Families arrived, some proud, some guilty, some both. I smiled when I remembered how to. Darius didn't come. That hurt in the practical way a splinter hurts. Small, sharp, insistent, proof of work done for someone who didn't wear gloves. Afternoon slanted toward dark. And the hall thinned. I returned to my room and made my bed like a chapel. Then Raina knocked with her knuckles, soft on purpose. A delivery, she said, almost singing. She handed me an envelope made of thick paper the color of a good wedding dress. My name on it, in cursive that took its time. I sat. My hands shook, not with age, but with weather you can't see on a map. I opened it. The first line leaned forward like a friend at a bus stop. Dear Mrs. Hollow, I hope I have the right Loretta. My name is Anna Cole. I believe my mother is your sister. I read the line again because the world tilted just enough to scatter the cutlery. My sister Ruthie left town in '69 with a man who smelled like gasoline and goodbyes. She sent 2 letters and then she didn't. The family closed that window to keep heat in. We told ourselves a story about Ruthie being a bird that preferred a different sky. It's easier to lose a person if you pretend the map ate them instead of a man. The letter moved gentle, like it knew my bones. Anna wrote of a shoebox found in an attic in Tulsa. Of a picture. 2 girls on a porch in dresses that knew how to make knees look innocent. My mother told me one night, Anna wrote, about the sister she loved and betrayed in the same breath. How she took a $10 bill your mother left on the dresser and never said sorry. She said your laugh sounded like water over stone. I placed the letter on my lap and saw us again. Me and Ruthie, feet bare, syrup on our fingers. Plotting a life where boys were punctuation and we were the sentences that didn't need them. I'd carried anger toward that girl who left and let me hold Ma's grief like a hot pan. Anger turns into furniture if you sit on it long enough. Mine had grooves from my shape. Now it shifted, became something else. Not forgiveness. Something before forgiveness. Recognition. Maybe. The map had not eaten her. Time had. Anna's letter ended with a line that felt like a door left unlocked on purpose. If it's too much, I understand. But if it's not, I would like to meet the woman whose name lived in my mother's mouth. Like a prayer she was ashamed to finish. I read the return address. Not far. 2 bus rides and a little faith. I folded the letter and placed it under my water glass as if weight could keep the past from blowing away again. Then I took out my good stationery. The set with the faint blue border that looks like it was painted by careful resignation, and wrote back, Dear Anna, I am Loretta. Your mother was my Ruthie. I have never stopped setting an extra plate for her in my heart. I am slow, but I am here. Come. I licked the envelope like it was sacrament and handed it to Raina like it was a newborn. She promised the post office would understand the assignment. Waiting is a craft. I practiced. Days curled up like cats. Darius texted a single line at 1:14 a.m. Ma, call me. I didn't. I am not a 24-hour store. Alma sent paperwork to confirm the trust filing. I signed with a hand that had sewn prom hems and shrouds. The world kept spinning as if someone believed in it. Anna arrived on a Saturday morning that wore fog like a shawl. She walked into the lobby with a coat 2 sizes, too big and eyes the exact color of Ruthie's when she'd borrow lipstick, and swear she was just holding it in case Sunday needed auditions. She carried a tin of cookies that tasted like someone's first attempt at a grandmother. I stood. We looked at each other the way mirrors look when they meet after years of reporting to different faces. The first hug wasn't elegant. It was a new bridge figuring out how much weight it could hold. She cried a little. I did, too, but only from one eye. The left always goes first. We sat by the window. The maple pretended not to eavesdrop. She told me about Ruthie, how her mother wore men like coats she meant to return, How she laughed at her own jokes and hid money in flour tins. How she never forgave herself for leaving me to lift our mother's sorrow alone. She said you were the brave one, Anna whispered. She said you stayed. I corrected her gently. Staying is a kind of leaving, too, I said. It's just the kind where you fold the loss into towels and pretend the linen closet is full of blessings. We didn't exchange all the history that day. You can drown in truth if you pour it too fast. We ate cookies. We watched a cardinal decide the feeder was safe. Before she left, Anna placed a small box on my lap. Inside, a hair ribbon blue with tiny white dots. I recognized it by how my fingers remembered tying it. She kept it, Anna said. Said it was the only thing she ever stole that refused to call the police. After she left, the room had more air than it started with. I slept a full night without dreaming of doors. In the morning, I called Alma and left a message that said nothing about ribbons and everything about wills. We're adding a name, I told her when she picked up. Not for the house. That's planted. For the little money I keep in jars that wear bank names. I want a scholarship at the church for girls who know how to run and might never be told how to stay. Name it for Ruthie. Let it buy shoes and bus fare and the first month in an apartment with a window that opens. Alma smiled through the phone. You always aim your revenge toward the living, she said. My kind of client. Darius finally came, not with flowers. With a face practicing the shape of contrition and getting the mouth wrong, he stood in the doorway and tried to make his height an apology. Ma, he said. I looked at him and saw all his ages layered like panes of glass. The child who wore flower-like armor. The teenager who learned silence from men who called it toughness. The man who believed homes were chess pieces. I didn't invite him to sit. He didn't ask. I messed up, he said, fingers worrying an invisible coin. I got out over my skis. The market. He stopped, saw my face, and remembered I could iron the arrogance out of a sentence. I wanted to make the house work for us. For us, I repeated, or for your version of us that doesn't include my preferences or my porch color. He closed his eyes. For a second, the boy arrived, the one who asked me if men were allowed to cry. I'm sorry, he said, 2 words that sat on the floor like they were afraid of furniture. I waited. Because sorry is a door, and you can't tell if it opens inward or out until you stand there a minute. He swallowed. I was wrong, he added, quieter, which is the correct volume for repentance. The trust, he waved his hand, as if courage were a gnat. You did what you had to. I did what I wished you would have, I said. Protected me without asking if the paperwork made you look generous. He nodded. I understand. You don't, I said, but I let him have the sentence. Understanding is a country people like to claim citizenship in without visiting. What do you want now? I asked. He looked confused, as if wanting had always been my side of the table. To help, he said finally. To show up. Showing up is not a performance, I said. It's a practice. There's a list at the front desk for volunteers who take residents to the garden. Put your name on it. Start there. He stared at me. At the maple. At his choices. Okay, he whispered. Bring a hat, I added. Son doesn't care about your intentions. He came on Tuesdays. He pushed Miss Ruth to the petunias and listened to Mr. Halliday tell the same war story with new adjectives. He fetched popsicles from the freezer with the reverence of a communion steward. He sat with me under the maple and didn't sell me anything. Sometimes we talked about nothing. Sometimes about football. Once, the conversation walked up to the edge of apology again and sat down. Too tired to jump. One afternoon, he pulled a rectangle from his pocket. A photo. Me and him at Coney Island. My dress a white flag I refused to wave, his grin so wide it gave God ideas. I found it in a box, he said. Throat thick. The house your house. The trust people let me carry out your albums. I didn't know. I didn't know I could miss something while still believing I owned it. I touched his wrist. Small mercies are the only kind that grow. Spring auditioned itself without asking. The maple threatened leaves. The cafeteria replaced stew with salads that weren't good but tried. Anna visited each month. We learned to laugh easily. We took turns being the older sister and the younger. Grief isn't chronological. She told me how Ruthie died in a quiet room with a nurse who braided her hair because kindness remembers braids even in places where curtains do the heavy forgiving. I told her how Ma went hands folded like unanswered letters. We let the stories stitch themselves without tugging. On the day of the scholarship ceremony at church, I wore a brooch shaped like a swallow. Alma came, and Raina sat beside me, waving her program like a fan at a backyard revival. The pastor read my little paragraph about girls and shoes and bus fare. We called it the Ruthie Ribbon Fund. 3 young women came up to the altar with eyes both bright and scared. I felt my heart go quiet in the way hearts do when they know they are in the correct room of the house of living. After service, a girl with braids like punctuation hugged me too long. "Thank you," she said into my shoulder. "I'm leaving a place that was going to swallow me." I squeezed back. "Baby," I said, "make sure the new place knows your name before you put your suitcase down." Darius stood in the back, not near power, near the ushers who practiced gentleness like a martial art. He watched and did not interrupt. Later, he handed me a folded paper. "I sold the condo," he said, eyes steady. "Paid off the debt. I'm teaching a class at the community center about money that doesn't lie. If they'll have me." He paused. "Do you think they'll have me?" "That depends on how much you listen," I said, "and whether you bring snacks." He laughed, short and true. "I can do snacks." I walked back to the home with Raina, who told me gossip like a news anchor who moonlights as a therapist. The sunset skipped across car hoods like a stone across lake water. My room greeted me with its soft hum of machine and memory. On the nightstand, the ribbon box sat, light and patient. I opened it. I pressed the blue fabric to my cheek and smelled a memory I couldn't name. Only trust. A month later, the trust invited me to see the family who moved into my blue house. They'd painted the door a color that listened soft green and put a tiny book box on the fence with a sign that read, "Take one, leave one." A little boy in dinosaur pajamas watered the dandelions like they were royal guests. His mother thanked me without making me hold the gratitude too long. "We'll keep it kind," she promised. I believed her. I touched the porch rail. The wood didn't flinch. Neither did I. Darius met us there and carried the old album inside, where the new couch smelled like possibility and store credit. He didn't look at the kitchen like a ledger. He looked at it like a room where soup could forgive the day. "Ma," he said quietly, "do you want to sit?" For the first time in many months, I sat in my own living room and felt no need to count anything. The maple drummed its fingers on the window, glad to see me without asking for rent. When it was time to go, the little boy waved a plastic Tyrannosaurus at me, as if to ward off all ancient harms. "Roar," he said. "Roar," I answered, and we understood each other perfectly. Back in my bed, I listened to the night machines breathe. The aide walked past, humming a song that used to live on my radio when I believed in requests. I thought of all the rooms I'd left and all the ones I'd entered by mistake. I thought of Ruthie's ribbon, of Anna's hands shaking when we first hugged, of Darius learning the weight of a popsicle in a hot garden. I thought of the house with the green door, holding a new family the way a bowl holds peaches gently, enough to keep their ache from bruising. People say revenge is eating something sweet, while the person who wronged you starves. That's not it. Revenge, once it has been soaked in wisdom and wrung out, looks more like a deed with your name arranged beside a future you will not live to see, and a son who shows up on Tuesdays with sunscreen and humility, and a ribbon in a box that says the map didn't eat her after all. It looks like a room where you sleep with the window open because you aren't afraid of weather. I turn off the light. The maple keeps watch like an old usher at a late service. The darkness comes simple, not as a threat but as a quilt. Before I close my eyes, I say the thing that keeps the hinge of my chest oiled. Not a prayer exactly, more like an address to the part of the world that listens even when it pretends it doesn't. I say, I am here. I stayed. I left. I planted a table. I set 3 extra plates, one for the girl I was, one for the woman my sister didn't get to be, and one for the boy who learned the difference between owning and belonging. When morning comes, I will eat what peace serves and save a slice for whomever knocks with clean hands. Summer came gentle, the way forgiveness sometimes does, quiet, without ceremony, carrying a scent you don't recognize until it's already in the room. The light through the blinds grew slower, as if it wanted to stay a little longer. I took to sitting by the window at dawn, coffee in hand, listening to the first shift of birds trade gossip before the world remembered its chores. Some mornings Darius joined me. He didn't speak much, just sat breathing beside me like a man trying to match the rhythm of a heart he'd once mistaken for a bank account. He'd changed, not all at once, but in small, human increments, the kind that don't announce themselves with trumpets. He'd begun visiting the older residents who didn't get visitors, fixing broken radios, teaching them to FaceTime grandchildren who'd forgotten how to spell love. I'd watch him through the glass door, gentle with them in a way he'd forgotten to be with me. Sometimes kindness returns in borrowed clothes. I didn't stop him. One evening, thunder murmured over the horizon. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings pretending to be old ones. Darius sat beside me again, fidgeting with his wedding band finger. "Bear now, Ma," he said quietly. "I thought I lost everything that doth a house. The respect, the name I built. But what I really lost was your trust. I'm still trying to earn that back. I didn't answer right away. I let the thunder fill the gap, because some silences need a witness. Then I said, trust isn't a gift, baby, it's a garden. You plant, you water, you wait. You don't get to harvest it just because you're tired of being hungry. He nodded, eyes shining with the ache of someone learning patience too late, but still learning. I'll wait, he whispered, and he did. Days passed, like soft pages turning. Anna visited often, sometimes with her daughters, sometimes alone. She'd bring stories about her students, her neighborhood, the community center where she started teaching literacy to women who wanted to read the names on their own mail. She said Ruthie would have been proud. I told her Ruthie was proud already. You can feel pride in the air when love still has work to do. One Sunday afternoon, we all sat together, me, Darius, Anna, and a handful of residents who'd wandered in for cookies and watched the sky throw gold over the parking lot. Darius told Anna about his new workshop on financial dignity. Anna told him about her students. Raina passed lemonade around like communion, and for the first time in years, laughter felt like home furniture again. It fit, it stayed. That night, after they'd all gone, I stood by the window and looked out at the maple. Its leaves shimmered under the porch light, each one whispering a different version of peace. I thought of Ruthie's ribbon, of Darius's careful Tuesdays, of the family in my old house reading bedtime stories under that same tree. I thought of every door that closed and every one that opened quieter but wider. I realized then that I had never, truly, been alone, only waiting for the noise of disappointment to fade enough to hear what remained. Love. Not the kind you trade, not the kind you prove, but the kind that lingers like the scent of rain on warm soil, like the hum of your own name, said kindly in the dark. I turned off the lamp. The maple bowed in the breeze, and I whispered, not to anyone, but to everything, I'm done surviving, I'm living now. Then I closed my eyes, and the night folded itself around me, soft, sure, and finally still.